Stage 1 load shedding is currently underway. Eskom started the rolling power cuts yesterday morning. The power utility is urging the public to continue using electricity sparingly. Earlier this month, about 1,000 megawatts was removed from the grid when a unit at Koeberg power station was taken offline for maintenance. Load shedding is expected to continue into the new year as Eskom has been battling unit breakdowns at its stations. From on the state of the power grid, we're joined by energy expert Clyde Mallinson. Clyde, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Newzroom Afrika. Now, we got a surprise with the Christmas present from Eskom announcing that there will be no load shedding. But I suppose that in itself is short-lived.
Very short-lived. It wasn't actually a surprise because every year we use about 4 stages of load shedding less on Christmas Day than we do on other days. So it was not that difficult for Eskom to arrange that there would be no load shedding on Christmas Day.
But what is different now is that Eskom then was able to ensure that there would be no load shedding, if you have to look at what happened last year, for the entire week. But that was just one day of no load shedding.
Yeah, look, the week between Christmas and New Year is traditionally a week of low usage. But on Christmas Day specifically, the peak is actually in the morning when people are busy cooking their Christmas turkey or whatever it is, and we don't have the evening peak. On these other days now, we will still have that evening peak, and that evening peak presents a difficulty for Eskom to match. So we need to have load shedding probably now, but it should be able to stay at stage 1, maybe stage 2, up until the end of New Year. And in fact, we use a lot less for the first week in January as well. But then I'm afraid we're back to 30,000 megawatts, and we're only managing to produce about 24 at the moment. So you can do the maths yourself. We're back into stage 4 to stage 6 territory, I'm afraid.
And what does this lower demand mean for emergency generation reserves?
It just means that they're able to supply the lower demand without having to make use of the diesel emergency reserves. So they keep the diesel as emergency. In fact, if you look at Christmas Day on the Eskom data portal, you'll see that no diesel was needed to be used on Christmas Day, but they did have to use some of the water resources that come from the pump storage water reservoirs. So they used about 1,000 or so from the water reservoir. They used no diesel. But remember, we were using about 5,000 megawatts less than we normally do because it was Christmas Day.
Yeah. I mean, the year 2022, as we reflect, was gripped with high levels of load shedding. And we know that just a few weeks ago, President Cyril Ramaphosa roped in the South African National Defence Force to guard the power plants. Do you think that we are seeing the effects of that rollout, or the acts of sabotage? How long until we see the full benefit of the SANDF as one aspect of the bigger picture?
No, I don't think we're seeing the effect of that. I think we're seeing the effect of the Christmas week, basically, at the moment. So I think the mobilization of the military to some of the power stations would help us stabilize the situation where it is at the moment. I'm not sure that the military will be in a position to up the output of the power stations, but they may be able to reduce further lowering of the output of the power station should there be any acts of active sabotage. So hopefully they can eliminate those acts. But you know, some people say some of the sabotage comes from within. My general feeling is that the Eskom staff who run the power stations are under tremendous pressure and have been so for the whole of this last year, but particularly for the last 3 months. And we should perhaps remember them at this Christmas time because they sure as anything haven't had Christmas off.
How crucial will the work of the new Eskom board be? Because we were told to give them some time and some space before, assessing and judging the outcome of their work. How crucial will that work be in the new year?
I don't want to sound flippant now, but I would say it's almost irrelevant. What's crucial now is that the artisans in the trenches keep what's going, and that we actually mobilize all of our efforts into building replacement generation. And the board can try and guide us in that fashion, but there's nothing that they can physically do that will change the situation, in my opinion. This now has become a national emergency that supersedes, if you like, the powers of the board. And it's time for the public and the private sector to join forces to sort this out, because if we don't do so, it's going to bring the country to its knees, I'm afraid.
With the consumers urged to use electricity sparingly, I mean, to what extent does that really need to translate into when it comes to day-to-day usage?
Look, I think it helps, and one doesn't have to urge consumers to use electricity sparingly over Christmas time. Everyone just does that de facto, and of course, a lot of the shops and businesses are closed. So, yeah, it's a time for relaxing, and I think South Africans have become used to managing with load shedding. In the same way that Cape Townians rallied to the cause when they were approaching day zero. But there's only so much we can do. And remember, if we use sparingly ourselves, it's kind of like a voluntary load shedding add-on, if you like. But in order to get our economy back to any sort of shape, we need to infuse more electricity into the system. Our whole economy is dependent on the ability to deliver electricity. And just by using it sparingly, it can be done at a household level, but at a business level, that normally translates into loss of production.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time and weighing in on this discussion. Clyde Mallinson, energy expert, speaking about the effects of load shedding and Eskom, especially as we go into the new year. Still to come.